Hare Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I forgot my computer. It's a mouse, but you have to know the combination. Change one thing and the combination. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. 1, 2, 3. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur. Jai Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Jaya Prabhupada. The Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gaunitai ki jai, Go Premananda.
Hare Krishna. We are very happy to receive His Grace Prithu Prabhu among us. His Grace Prithu Prabhu, he was born and brought up in a traditional family of Germany and pursued his studies in the field of comparative religion in Bonn University. He came in contact with ISKCON in 1972. He got Ishopanishad book from the devotees, read it in one night and joined ISKCON next day. Prabhuji received initiation from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada in the same year 1972. He actively assisted Srila Prabhupada in preaching Krishna consciousness and arranged meeting of Prabhupada with various philosophers, including famous German philosopher Graf Durkheim. Later on, he served as the temple president in Germany, further started center in Switzerland, and subsequently also served as the temple president in Amsterdam. Later, he was also the in charge for Detroit Temple. Subsequently, Prabhuji went to Ireland and started a wonderful farm community over there. Later, he came to India and started serving Srila Prabhupada by establishing Srila Prabhupada Vani Ashram in ISKCON Vrindavan. In India, he had traveling bus party to preach in various colleges, including IIT Kanpur. He preached in IIT Kanpur from 1987 till 1995 for 8 years, and many members from IIT Kanpur became devotees. They are placed as professors and different professional fields in IIT Guwahati, IIT Varanasi, COAP Pune, and some joined Bhaktivedanta Institute. And myself also came in contact with him in IIT Kanpur in 1992. And I am here with all of you. And then Prabhuji started preaching in Russia afterwards. 2 years ago, he moved from Germany to India. Since that time, he has been traveling and preaching extensively in different places. He met Srila Prabhupada several times in Germany, France, Paris, London, India, and he was also personally present in the last 3 weeks of Srila Prabhupada's departure from this planet in Vrindavan. He altogether served as GBC for 20 years from 1984 to 2004 for places like Ireland, Germany, America, Oregon, Washington, Vrindavan, Hyderabad, Delhi, etc. And he was serving along with His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj as co-GBC in different places. While he was practicing his Krishna consciousness as householders, He raised his children nicely in Krishna consciousness, and they are still practicing Krishna consciousness nicely, including his grandchildren also very happy in Krishna consciousness. So we are happy to receive His Grace Prithu Prabhu today here, and we welcome him loudly by chanting 3 times Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. So I take one verse from Scripture, and that is there a verse? There's a verse here. Aho? Where is that verse? Huh? That one?
3:23.
Yes, you have to pull up Sanskrit for that verse. 1 second.
3:23.
Yeah, that's just a purport.
3:2.
All right.
3:23.
Give me 1 second, Prabhus, I will do it. This is a little glitch we have here. Relax, I will be with you in a minute.
3.2.20.
I have to get there first. If somebody has it on his notebook, on his phone, he can give it to me. And no, not easy here to do that. Have it? That one. That one we just quoted here. Sorry we blew that, but I had a very complicated day yesterday. There we are, isn't it? No, that one. 3:2:23. That one. Yes. You have it? Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna. You have for a moment. I read the verse. It's not on the blackboard, is it? It's there. We need some actually warm water. I'm very sore. We need some warm water. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aho Bhakiyam Stana Kalam Kalakutam. Chikam Sapayayat Apya Sadvi. Libegatim Datru Shitam Tatonyam. Kamva Dayalum Sharanam Rajema. Somebody? Aho Bhakiyam Stanakala Kutam. Somebody else? So let us fast forward, because we have already spent some time unnecessarily on arranging. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than him, Lord Krishna, who granted the protection of a mother to the she-demon Putana, although she was faithless and had prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. Purport. Here is an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord, even to his enemy. It is said that a noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just as one accepts nectar from a stock of poison. In his babyhood, he was administered deadly poison by Putana, the she-demon who tried to kill the wonderful baby. And because she was a demon, it was impossible for her to know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although playing the part of a baby, was no less than the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. His value as a Supreme Lord did not diminish upon his becoming a baby or to please his devotee Yashoda. The Lord may assume the form of a baby or shape other than a human being, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. He's always the same Supreme. A living creature, however powerful he may be, by dint of severe penances, can never become equal to the Supreme Lord. Then, Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Putana because she pretended to be an affectionate mother, allowing Krishna to suck her breast. The Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. Therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter? Magyan Timidandas Yagananjana Shalakaya Chakshanamiritam Yinatasmai Siguravima Sititanya Manovishtam Stapitamina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Siguru Siyuta Patakamalam Sigurun Vaishnavam Sha Sirupam Sagajatan Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savaduta Paijana Saitam Krishna Chaitana Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivijakam Vitam Sha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kantana Mustute Tapta Kanchana Gurange Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripe Vanchakalpataruvi Sha Kripa Sindhava Eva Cha Paditanam Pavanevi Vaishnavi Brahmonava Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Visago Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram. I have to admit that this is one of my favorite verses. I was given the facility to pick my own verse or verses in the next day. And so this is an extraordinary situation, actually. Maybe not in terms of Krishna, because Krishna is always the same, but from our angle, it is an extraordinary situation that somebody came to murder Krishna, and he was achieved the position of a mother in the spiritual world. That's extraordinary in our experience. Normally, if you murder somebody, you go to jail. Simple thing, you know, or you get hanged, even. This is a general situation in human society. But here we see just something the opposite. And this is how Krishna is. He is extraordinary in all qualities, including the quality of mercy. No one can excel Krishna in terms of mercy. You know, and he transfers his mercy to devotees also. You see how Srila Prabhupada was able, out of a very, very humble beginning, to create such an enormous movement. It is only due to the fact that Krishna transferred a large amount of mercy to Srila Prabhupada. His spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, transferred a large amount of mercy to Srila Prabhupada. And therefore, does it have to be so close? And therefore, they were able to do so many astounding things by the mercy of Krishna. Like even Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, he said in the end, I have regained my memory by your mercy. The focus is on mercy in this case. You know, that without the mercy of Krishna, we read yesterday that Haridas Thakur said that no one in this world is able to chant the holy name without distraction. He said, no one. Such victory, he says. It's from, what is it? It's from what's Harinam Chintamani. Such victory is only possible by the mercy of God. Therefore, we have to pray for that mercy. That's the situation. That without Krishna's mercy, we cannot do anything. In fact, I cannot even scratch my head. Yes, very good. I cannot even scratch my head without Krishna. I cannot even lift this glass without Krishna. And I can't even drink without Krishna. Because we are not the body. We are just the instruments. And we are the passenger. The passenger doesn't drive. The driver is the super soul. And so it is amazing how Putana, let's hear about the story about Putana. In her last life, she was Ratnamali. She was the sister of Prahlad Maharaj. That was her past. When Vamandev appeared in front of Bali, Bali wanted to pay his obeisances, naturally. But he was surrounded by demons. He's the king of the demons. And also his spiritual master was there. And he was also not exactly inclined to Krishna. And so in the presence of these people, in the presence of these circumstances, he was hesitant to pay his obeisances. And so he bowed down in front of Krishna. And so Krishna smiled. Vamandev smiled. And so Bali could understand he accepted my obeisances. And there's a verse where he said how wonderful it is that although I paid my obeisance even just in my mind, still Krishna accepted my obeisances. So Putana, her reaction was very different. When she saw Bali, she became attracted by his beauty. And she had developed some motherly feelings for Vamandev. And so these motherly feelings, nobody can imitate. Nobody can imitate. We see different times motherly feelings are expressed in various personalities in our movement, and no man can understand the heart of a woman, what it means to have a son. And so she manifested for a moment, for a slight moment, these sentiments that I would like to have this boy as my child. It's a natural reaction of a woman. And then when she saw that Vamandev took everything away, she became filled with anger and hatred. And he said, and I would kill you. Now, this is such a horrendous change from motherly feelings to complete aggression. And so Krishna, Nitya Nityananam, Chetana Chetananam, Ekvo Yovidagam, he fulfills all the desires. And so she became, in the next life, Putana. She had this facility to, and she was wicked. She was a very wicked woman. She killed so many children in the neighborhood. And so even when she saw Krishna, her intention was to do just that, following in the footsteps of her previous life. And we cannot understand a life of a person unless we were able to cross that threshold to her previous existence. Once we see that, we can see why. Like people in the concentration camp, they lose their faith. Say, why does God do this to me? But if they were able to cross the threshold of their previous life, they would understand very clearly why. There's no question. When the World Trade Center in America collapsed, one bishop was saying, where was God in New York yesterday? Now we know that Krishna is there at every moment. And one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost to him, nor is he never lost to me. God is not away. He is here, and he's in the Trade Center, and he's everywhere at every moment, and it's because of Krishna that certain things happened that we cannot understand when we do not understand that before this life there was another life, etc. We cannot understand. It's interesting that a religiosity where there's philosophy, that quote unquote philosophy, that there's only one life, cannot understand why things are happening. I saw one time a video. It was a show, what is it called, a teleconference, after the tsunami in Japan. And so in the center of the conference was the Pope of Rome. And one little girl called, said, Father, you know God, why are all my friends dead? And his answer said, I thought the same thing. And we do not have any answers. It is shocking if you think about that. You know, I think about that deeply. That he's a leader of 3.5 billion people in this world. And a simple question, that why are all my friends dead, cannot be answered if your theology has no defined concept of the soul. You know the soul, for the soul there's never birth nor death. Read Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, and you're cured from ignorance. That's it takes you. What does the Bhagavad Gita cost here? 130
huh? 130 rupees.
So with 130 rupees, you can explain why. Why? Why do people suffer? Because no one is innocent, not even a child. Not even a child is innocent. And we can understand this if we were to be able to see that. Why his destiny is so cruel. You have to see that. You see in Bhishma, grandfather Bhishma therefore said, no one can understand the plan of the Lord because no one of us is able to see that. You know, that part that is hidden by the process of death and birth. It hides that. And good so, because otherwise we would have to go through so many situations again in our anxieties. And so we cannot understand Putana, why she became so envious, really deeply, unless we know her previous situation. It's revealed in Scripture. That's why we have to look through Scripture. We have to look through Scriptures to understand reality. And if you look through Scriptures, my Lord, in Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavatam, Kamana Deva Nechina, Krishna says, under my control, according to his karma, he achieves a particular kind of birth. And then in the ultimate issue, you can't blame anybody because you're the cause of your own suffering. Everybody is that. So this is interesting how Krishna now reacted to that. That Putana, actually, when she saw Krishna, with intention to kill her, for a moment she became like a devotee. Because this is the situation in our life as well. Sometimes it is goodness, sometimes we are in passion, sometimes we are in ignorance. It's always changing. And Kamsa is a classical example, going between killing and mercy back and forth 100 times. You can see that. His mind is uncontrolled. It's not based, his knowledge is not based on some scriptural knowledge he had, quite astounding. If you read what Kamsa explained about this whole process of reincarnation, it's astounding. But then he forgets everything. due to the influence of Maya. Maya takes his mind away. And the situation is very carefully observed that when she saw Krishna for a moment, she became overwhelmed by motherly feelings, the same motherly feelings she had generated in her previous life. Interesting. Nothing gets lost in this process. The same feelings took charge of her for a moment. And then she had a so-called reality check. She fell back into the material reality and she tried to kill Krishna. And then Krishna, he didn't see that part. He did, he had to act in that sense. For that he killed the body. He only killed the body. But as far as his soul is concerned, he considered that she had some motherly feelings, even in her previous life for me, when I was appearing as Vamandev. So in this life, also, even just for a moment, even little progress on this path saves them from the greatest type of fear. That verse. There's a story that comes into my mind. There was, it comes from Russia. There were the Russian devotees. They were dancing on the street near the university a long time ago. And so there was one atheist. He was on the other side of the street. And he would always ridicule them. He said, there are the penguins. Because the voice looked like penguins. There they are the penguins dancing. And they were laughing. And so the devotees were kind of simple-hearted. They said, oh, they're friends, they're lovers. And they waved. And so he waved back. And this happened many times. Many times he saw the devotees. He said, there the penguins are again. And he ridiculed. And every time the devotees were waving, and he waved back. So then, one time, that was the best thing he ever did in his life, actually, which you will see now. One time he had a deadly car crash. He drove into a truck. Almost deadly, almost. And he lost consciousness, and then there was brilliant phosphotic light, like when you burn phosphotic light. There were 3 guys standing there, staring at him. Tusks, claws, horns. And they said, that's it. It's over. You tried so hard, but the show is over. And they threw a lasso around his neck and pulled him. How do I know all this? Because he revealed it later. Pulled him into a court. There was a man sitting on a royal throne. And he yelled at him, saying, Nikolai Ivanovich, I'm glad you have come finally. Now, what has he done? Some secretary stood up, Gupta, and said, well, hundreds of people in the audience. He said, well, his life was bad. So many bad things. What is it? Hunting women, taking intoxicants, beating people, stealing, robbing. I mean, it was horrible. So the man on the throne said, and? Anything? He said, yes. One good thing. Whenever he saw the devotees of our Lord Sri Krishna, the man really went like this for a moment in prayer. And all the audience, dead silence. He said, what did he do? He said, every time he saw the devotees, he was waving them. Yamaraj said, that's wonderful. How many times? 27 times. Yamaraj was very pleased. And then he yelled at him, and what would you do if I give you another chance? I would become a Hare Krishna. The man on the throne went, Haribol. He said, you go right back. And he was thrown into this form. And he opened his eyes. There were 2 doctors pressing his breast and said, he's coming, keep on pressing. And he went to the temple in Moscow. And he told the devotees this story. And the devotees said, lucky you. People see Yamaraj only one time in their life. And then it's too late. But you have you achieved that particular benediction that you could come back. Now you told him you should become a devotee. Come on, do it. And he became a devotee. You see how Krishna is kind. You know, there was this one little thing, probably the only positive thing he did in his life. There were some other maybe as well. But that was actually, that he actually waves the devotees in a friendly manner. That little thing in a huge life of abuse from every level, cruelty, sexual or whatever, sensual, carried him into another situation to be a devotee, and more precisely a book distributor who goes out distributing Prabhupada's books. This is how I know this story. It's in a book of one of our Russian spiritual masters. And you see, Krishna, he knows everyone. He knows our, like yesterday we talked about, that every human being is a mixture of glory, Prabhupada says, and fault. You know, every human being. And but the father, when the little son brings him shoes, father didn't even ask for it. The son comes with 2 left shoes. The father will be very pleased. Whether he comes with 2 left shoes, 2 right shoes, or 1 right or 1 left, it doesn't make a difference to the father, really. But does makes a difference that he tries to do something for me. That's what he sees. He doesn't see that there's, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, every activity is covered by some fault. Every activity is covered by something. He didn't see that. He didn't want to see that. As opposed to general people, and also if we have that mentality, we don't see the good. We see, oh, at one time, I remember 30 years ago. Therefore, this is mundane consciousness. It's mundane consciousness, you know. So Krishna is very different in Prabhupada also. Yesterday I was telling you, there was one, I think he took even sannyas. It was one of the first, in the very early beginning. And, but in due course of time, he fell back to his habit. And he started to Om Shiva, you know, a little bit. Smoking chillum. And so Prabhupada noticed it. He could see it, but he didn't do anything initially. And so then one day, he was so intoxicated that he came, he asked godbrother, not a godbrother, one of his godbrothers, Prabhupada has a pain in his back. We need some oil from Bang, hashish, oil, to massage. And of course, this was not true. He wanted to use it himself. So he was so intoxicated, Krishna put him into this role that he became so intoxicated that it became clear to everyone. He took his clothes off in front of Prabhupada in madness. And Prabhupada chased him out of the room. Prabhupada became very angry. He left. And this devotee asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, will you forgive him? He said, Prabhupada, sure. He said, Prabhupada, is there an end to your mercy? He said, no end. He said, Nityananda, mercy is unlimited. It's so nice to hear that. It's so encouraging. Nityananda's mercy is unlimited. And Prabhupada's mercy is unlimited. There are many examples where he showed that particular feature of him, that he was not at all interested in the defects. I mean, again, you just give another story since we added. There was one devotee, Swarno Prabhupada, and he came to Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, such and such devotee is always cooking for himself. Prabhupada said, oh, really? So what is he doing? Is he cooking right now? Oh, Prabhupada first he said, well, he's a good cook. That was the first word Prabhupada said. Well, he's a very good cook. And then he started complaining, but Srila Prabhupada, what kind of example? And Prabhupada said finally, is he cooking right now? He said, yes. Prabhupada said, bring me some. I like to take his food. He's a very good cook. And so it shut him down ultimately. You can see Prabhupada was not interested with it. He heard that any kind of unnecessary criticism, he was disgusted. He didn't want to hear that. He saw only the good. Just like Krishna in this particular episode. in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, and then later in the 10th canto. Then you hear the story of Putana, that Krishna's mercy is unlimited, and Nihavi Kramanashasti Pratyana Navidyati Swapamapyasa Dharmasya Trayati Matu Bayat, in this endeavor there's no loss and no diminution. No diminution. It means whatever is there, it's never diminished. And even a little progress can save a man from the greatest type of fear. It's so nice. So nice. There was a man, when I had to go to Kenya at one time. My son was very ill. He had pneumonia in Ireland, very damp weather, the worst weather for pneumonia. And so our GBC dry theater, he told me, please go to Kenya. It's my zone and I know the weather there. So we flew. And so I stayed in the temple, in a room with Navaganda Swami. That was quite an adventure, I must say. And so there was one man, his wife was coming for lecture and kirtan, and he was outside talking business, with other businessmen. So then one day he started circumambulating the temple. And he was chanting. What is he chanting? Hey Narayan, Hey Narayan, Hey Narayan. Then not 1 time, 3 times, 4 times. Then he came in the morning, then at noon, then in the evening, Hey Narayan, Hey Narayan, and became a feature. And I was amazed, how he changed. Then one time he didn't come anymore. And so the doctor, the Indian doctor, Africa is full of Indian doctors and Indians in general, he called and said, Prithu Das, you have to come, this man, remember, Hey Narayan, Hey Narayan. I said, yes, he's dying. He said that you should come, so we came. So when we came, the doctor said, well, you're too late. I said, why, did he pass away? He said, no, but he cannot understand anything. I said, why not? He said, if you look at the screen, he had a monitor there. He said, there's no brain activity. He's brain dead. So I said, well, let's chant. He can't complain, obviously. The doctor said, that's right. And so we chanted, and after 20 minutes, the screen started to flicker, and more, the nun who was supervising 5 or 6 of these cases in a separate room, in the control room, she was just looking at screens, people's blood pressure, brain activity, etc. She came running, what happened? What happened? And she called the doctor, he's coming back. So the doctor came and he said, what happened? The man came back. And then this man stood up in bed and said, now it is Hare Krishna all the way. And he fell back and was dead. Think about that. It's amazing. It's just amazing how Krishna is kind. How Krishna is kind. Ajamil is another story. The whole Bhagavatam is full of stories like that we see how Krishna is kind and how we can be confident that whatever we do for Krishna, even a little thing, is never lost. Even a smile, this little pool that he at the end of his life chanted as somebody waves to the devotee, is never lost. What to speak of if somebody actually turns his life to Krishna and practices Krishna consciousness to the degree he's able to. Not everybody is able to perform Krishna consciousness on the same level. We see some of our great souls, a huge amount of service they have done to society due to the enormous amount of pious credits. Otherwise it is not possible. We can, even like I said, you can't scratch your lip. Not possible. It's all due to Krishna's mercy. And this is what I wanted to talk about. This sentiment of Krishna, that he sees only the good things, called Bhavagrahi Janagna. The Lord is seeing only the good. He sees even a little prayer, even a little, whatever it is, hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, giving a book to somebody. And you never know what result this may be for that particular person that got a book. He may not understand it in the beginning. I know one person that he was so absorbed in young boy, he was so absorbed in playing computer games. In fact, he played with Doom. There's one playing Doom for 10 years flat of his life. And he was inaccessible to his parents, practically speaking. And then one day, Krishna kicked him hard, because that's what he needed. He needed a kick in the head. And in his despair, he picked up one of Prabhupada's books, and he read and read and read and read, and has not stopped reading. You know, so because there was something in his life previously, I know that very well because I'm the father after all. There was some piety there. I actually tried not to say that, but it slipped. So, and now his life is different. He is full on, you know, because Krishna helped him. He put him into this distress, and he kicked him into the head very hard. And if Krishna does that, there is a wonderful explanation by Srila Prabhupada I would like to do to show you that. Give me a moment. Where Prabhupada talks about precisely that situation. Distress. There it is. When a devotee is in distress, when a karmi is in distress, he spends his life moaning. If he's innocently suffering, that's the worst suffering in existence, practically speaking. And I am innocent, I'm wonderful, but I have to live like this. I have to be in a concentration camp, which is horrible. I know from my father, he was in a concentration camp. And the horrors of horrors are horrors. But to get your head around the idea, if you're in that situation, and this is Krishna's mercy, that's very tough. It's very tough to do that, in particular to keep this thought in your consciousness. That's hard work. So when Prabhupada explains this, he said, when a devotee is in distress, he sees that the Lord has appeared as distress, simply to purify the devotee from the contamination of the material world. That's what it is. That sometimes Prabhupada said that everyone is in Krishna's hands. And he, not just you sleep there, he puts you through all kinds of situations to come to the highest conclusion. I remember one time one of our sannyasis, it was Satchidananda Swami. He met somebody who was very distressed. He was a devotee. And Maharaj explained to him, he said, when Krishna loves you, then he puts you on an anvil. Somebody knows what an anvil is? And it's a blacksmith. He has an anvil. It's a piece of iron, big hunk of iron, puts the iron on it and bangs it into shape. It's called an anvil. So he said, when Krishna loves somebody, he puts him on an anvil. And he beats him and beats him and beats him and beats him till the iron has turned into gold. So there's another story in this regard. I got it also from Satchidananda Swami. Has sometimes really good stories. And there was, it's in Croatia, the Croatian story or Balkan story. There was a potter, and he went through the forest and saw that somebody had digged a hole, fresh. He looked into this hole and he saw there was nice clay down there. And he went down there and picked it up, and it was like perfect gopi chandan. Not when there is grit in the chandan, you know, sometimes there's grit. Painful when you make it in the hand. Perfect, perfect. And he grabbed a whole bunch of it and walked home. Immediately with great enthusiasm, he started to punch it to make it more malleable. And to his surprise, the earth, the clay started talking. He said, why are you doing this? This hurts. Please stop. He said, not yet. And he kept pounding. Then he put him on a wheel and span him. The clay said, I'm getting dizzy. Please stop this. very small voice, I'm dizzy, I'm getting dizzy. It hurts me, please stop, please stop. He said, not yet. And he says, then he puts a pot into a stove. And it was very hot. And the pot was praying, please let me out, please. He saw there was a hole in the oven. He saw the lips of the potter. Not yet. So then he took him out and he put him into the pool. It was very nice. And then the potter took a brush and started painting him with colors. And the pot started crying, that hurts, my skin is so sensitive, please stop. The potter said, not yet. Then he put him into another stove, which was 10 times higher, to burn the glazour, you know. And it was crying and crying, please let me out. Potter said, almost. And then he took him out and put him on a shelf. And the pot cooled down. And then the potter took a mirror, holding it. The pot says, I didn't know how beautiful I am. The potter said, yes, that's what it takes. That's what it takes to become beautiful. And so the life of devotees, great devotees you see in the life of the Pandavas, is full of calamities, full of difficulties, this and that and that and that. And everybody who has been long enough in ISKCON, can write a book about it. You know, I've been around 50 years now, almost to the day. You go through all kinds of strainful situations, but we should understand. And this is Krishna's mercy, is the end to have us come to perfection. Now I will read to you further. Then Prabhupada says, devotee sees distress as another feature of the Lord. Tatinu kampam sukshamikshamano. A devotee therefore regards distress as a great favor of the Lord because he understands that he's being cleansed from the contamination. Tesham samudartam mrityu samsaras sagarat. Now he says something. The appearance of distress is a negative process intended to give the devotee relief from the material world, which is mrityu samsara, or the constant repetition of birth and death. It's a negative process. What is a positive process then? Anybody has an idea? Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam. You know, even the greatest sin is forgiven if you turn to Krishna. You can have the purification this way, and you chant Hare Krishna and preach Krishna consciousness, and then whatever distress are there shrink, maybe even to nothing in due course of time. Whereas if you don't, well, then you have to learn what they call the hard way. Bonus bonum bonum. My father used to say, in old German, very old 15th century, "Musst du nicht lernen, banis bana banum, dann musst du lernen, spanen spanun spanun." If you don't want to learn Latin, bonus bonum bonum, then you have to learn how to put a horse into the cart, from one cart into the other, or take a horse out of the cart. Then you have to go to the plow department. And we know that's true, even in material life. It's very true, you know. So if you don't want to learn Banus Banam Bana with Krishna, then that is the only way how we can become purified by suffer the reactions of your deeds. And that is that we if somebody is a little elevated, he can see Krishna's hand there. And I just read to you a fascinating report from one of our godbrothers that this Solzhenitsyn is a very great literary person in Russia who suffered under communism in the concentration camp. And he wrote many, many books about this issue. He said, when I was a young boy, the old people told me, very interesting, the old people told me in all these calamities, 60 million people were killed, 60 million in the Russian Revolution. 60 million people. He said, all these calamities happened to us because we have forgotten God. That was the conclusion. The Siddhanta of all this, that we have forgotten God. And so he said, now I spend my whole life studying the revolution and its results, interviewed hundreds of people, wrote even 8 big books about the Russian Revolution. And he said, at the end of all my study and all my work, I came to the conclusion that these calamities happened because we have forgotten God. Something he was told 50 years ago he had saved himself all that suffering if he would have been able to hear, if he would have been able to put that knowledge to practice. He couldn't hear it. He ran into a life full of study and philosophy and this, that. He became a famous man, all right. But what does it help him at the time of death? All this study. He could have just learned from his grandmother. In Russia, it's a babushka. You should just listen to the babushka and you get to save yourself from wasting your time. You see, that's the point. And so any calamity, even I was telling Gaura Lila, when Prabhupada came to the West, his first tape recorder was, tape recorder was stolen. Not tape recorder, typewriter was stolen. Do you know what the name of the typewriter was? I have a picture of it. It says Corona. Corona. Very close to Kaduna. Very close to Kaduna, you know. Corona. Anybody who wants to have that picture, I give it to go. It's amazing. It's just, there's no accident in this, you know. Because what happened to the Russian Revolution and what happens right now, it is Krishna. It's nothing but Krishna. And Prabhupada, he manifested that in his last day. There were other things he said. I happened to be there, and I could tell you quite a lot of stories in this regard, which are very insightful. And so the last thing he said, he was already making this noise, which is described in our scripture as good, you know. Who has seen somebody die here in this room? Lift up your hand. Yes. Yes, and you have to hear this only one time. Then you know what's happening, right? You have to see a man dying only one time and you know exactly the moment when somebody leaves his body, when the face turns into a mask within minutes or seconds even, you know, and the eyes become like glass, you know. And so that happened, you know, that when we don't learn by hearing, then we have to learn the hard way. And that is expressed here as distress, seeing it. When the devotee is in distress, he sees the Lord has appeared as distress just to relieve or purify the devotee from the contamination of the material world. On the other side, if somebody is able to see that and see the consequences, like Prabhupada said at that time, everything moving and non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. It's the last sentence Prabhupada spoke in his life. The next one was, Hare Krishna, and he was already gone, without completing the word Krishna. He was already gone. And so that is a situation that everything moving and non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. Then we can understand that every kick in our face, it is the negative process of learning. Now the positive process is Harinam, 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 Kevalam. Kalea dosha nidhi rajan asti eva mahagunan. There's one good quality. Ketanat eva Krishnasya mukta bandha parambrajet. That this one good quality in Kali Yuga is when somebody chants, then all the papa, all the sins are forgiven by Krishna. Now, if we talk with Christians, for example, their whole philosophy is, one of the main tendencies that if we turn to Jesus, our sins are forgiven. So to say, anatta nivritti syat, sins are forgiven. But we know that's only 50% of the deal. The whole thing means to come to the platform of love of God. So even if we are forgiven our sins, that is just the beginning of the next steps. Then there's ruchi, there's detachment, there's nishta, firm faith, different from the initial faith, adho-shraddha, realized faith, and then there comes bhava, and then there's prema. So from there, from all sins are forgiven to prema, now that is a real difficulty. That's the biggest problem, to come there. But coming back to this gist of this story, the essence of the story, that sarvam kalvidam brahma, the devotee sees, and now comes the big thing, what Prabhupada says here. The devotee can see as only one supreme person, one supreme personality of God, and no second entity. That means the idea that we are separate from Krishna is just in the head. It doesn't exist. There's only one living being, and that is God. And we are all his parts and parcels. Like somebody who says, here's this person. And you mean also his fingers, you mean his parts, you mean everything. There's only one person in the room, there's nobody else. So in the same way, the truth is awesome. I find this awesome when I read that piece, you know. Just such a little thing Prabhupada mentions there, you almost overread it. Like the idea that this is a negative process, you have to start thinking about it. The idea that there's only one living being. You know, this is, I mean, you ask any religionist in the world, how many living entities there are? So many. He said, but there's only one living being. He said, I never heard this in church. I have never heard it in church. There's only one living being, and that is Krishna, and we are all his parts, his expansions. Jiva, his expansions. That's such a highly, it's such a pivot of philosophy. It's just incredible if you think about it. And Prabhupada said that there's only the Lord who presents himself in different energies. There's nothing but Krishna. Prabhupada said that everything moving, non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. And whoever does so, whoever gets to that level, that highest level of consciousness, to see God in everything, while he was dying, you know, I mean, think about it. People, I heard one devotee told me that one of his relatives, when he was dying, he breathed and said, "Panir," and died. That was the last thing. His last breath was panir. Panir, everybody knows panir. Panir, you know. He was thinking of panir. You know, panir, can you imagine? The last thought. You know. And there's so many ways how people die. Yam yam pisulam bhavam vyajati ante kalibram. Tam tamevati kauntiya. And so Prabhupada's exalted stage, you cannot, that is a test. These last seconds, that is actually the conclusion of his whole life in this one sentence, everything moving and non-moving. And that's why Prabhupada was able to do all these things, because he did not take any credit. That's the point. He did not take any credit. Like, I mean, he read this whole list of glorious deeds, you know, but that's just, what is it? After all, you cannot even lift your hand without Krishna. And besides that, every human being is a mixture of glory and fault. He didn't read that part in his presentation. But Krishna and Prabhupada, Prabhupada particularly, that at the time of death, he uttered that. He said, everything moving on, there's nothing but Krishna, like he says here. And I read that many times, but I didn't get that point. That's why we have to read Prabhupada's books again and again to get that point, that Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. A devotee actually sees that there's only the Supreme Personality of Godhead and no second entity, ekam ivaditiyam. The Lord, there's only the Lord who presents himself in his different energies. So in this way we can understand suffering. When suffering comes to us, if we are in the right consciousness, we say yes, yes. I read one of Prabhupada Godbrothers. He said a similar thing. Maybe I have to pull it up here. Yesterday we talked about it. I was really astonished. He says, Bhakti Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Swami, Prabhupada was very fond of him. The environment which you are presently facing, whatever it may be trouble, it may be not trouble, it may be happiness, it may be distress. The environment which you are presently facing is a product of your own karma. Number one. It is produced by your own action, therefore you cannot lodge any complaint against it, as you yourself are responsible. That means all the sufferings in the world are self-inflicted. They're self-inflicted. This is what we understand in our philosophy. Self-inflicted. Whatever it may be, it's self-inflicted. And so then he says, this is really great, he said, if in your life you can accept this truth in your life, and you can accept this truth in your sadhana, then in no time you shall prosper, because divine grace will be attracted and most intensely to you. If we accept that truth, that actually everything is coming from Krishna, and even my suffering, and I accept that, that is what I have to do. You know, that I have to accept that and see it is Krishna's hands, just like the hands of the potter. The story I told you. The potter making a pot. It's the hand of the potter. And Krishna is a potter, and we are the clay. Very simple. So my time is up, I guess. Yeah. Any questions? Quick question? And Srila Prabhupada, I will be here another 7 days. You have to tolerate. And so we talk some more. Any question? Last question? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, thank you so much for elaborating the kindness of Krishna and how Yamraj and Prabhupada could see the good side of people who are devotees or who did something for Krishna. Who did something for Krishna, so they could see that in forefront in their lives. This Prabhupada's pastime you told about, cook.
Paraphrasing what you spoke, he has not yet asked the question.
Huh?
He is just paraphrasing what you spoke. He has not yet asked the question. He will ask. He is going to ask the question.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
It takes a little time, you know.
Yes, Prabhuji. Just trying to understand this Krishna's kindness, Prabhupada's kindness, Yamaraja's kindness. So, how do we develop that value of seeing that in our life and others' life? Because generally there is a tendency to see the other side which becomes magnified, the fault side, as you said. So, how do we see that value in other devotees? Which Prabhupada?
It requires some purification. It requires purification. Unless there's purification, we cannot see that. I mean, I just love, yesterday we were talking about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He, in his Shikshamrita, he describes all the different bad qualities that are ravaging in our hearts in forms of demons. Demons are in our heart. And he said we should meditate on this quality instead of meditating on our glories. I did this and I did that and so many things and I'm wonderful, all this. Why we have to see the fault in us. It's very important. You know, there is he indicated that I come from a traditional, in this case, Christian family. And I got some incredible lessons from my mother particularly. Like she said, and I'll never forget it, and he repeated it many times. He said, first God, then God, then God. Then the others, then the others, and the others, then yourself. If we could apply this, even our chanting, first God, before my mind goes into Facebook or whatever nonsense it may be, first God, second God, third God. If if you can maintain this through 16 rounds, your life will never be the same. Simple rule, but your life will never be the same. So it requires some purification. And so he advises Bhaktivinoda Thakur that we should study these qualities and then ask Krishna in remorse, Lord, I have this quality like Putana, I have this quality like the horse demon Keshigat being puffed up. Or this, we all have that. But we don't see that because we are so busy seeing the speck. You know, the speck is something like 50 micro. You can see it when the light falls through a screen. Prabhupada describes that. You see that speck, you find it. I found something. I know now. I found the fault in you. This is a celebration of the materialist. He has a beam, a log in his own eye. You know, and so you're not exposed much to the Bible, and that may be good so, but I tell you, there's one verse. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye? Jesus said. You hypocrite, look into your own eyes and see the beam in your own, and be busy. And be busy with that. You know, so that's the thing. We're not busy with it, that's why we have to meditate on these qualities. He said you have to meditate on these qualities, bad qualities, and you will identify in your own. You have to start with yourself. Rather, you will, then you won't see even the beam in your brother's eye. And if they just say you don't even want to see it, you even don't want to see that. You see, but remember, last time he did this, wonderful. Last time he did that, wonderful. And before he did that and that and that. And if you start studying people in that eye, you come to a complete different picture. Complete different picture, you know? And so that's the idea that if we can accept that truth in our own life, you know, that whatever I suffer is my own foolishness, then Krishna will be attracted to us. You know, he will be good quality. What does he say here? The divine grace will be attracted to you most intensely. If you understand this, you know, this is the thing. So purification is really the solution. That's why we have to chant, and we have to hear, and we have to serve, and we have to perform devotional service, because then the iron rod doesn't have to do anything except staying in the fire. So we can only change our heart by purification. And it is not, we can't do it by ourselves. We need the divine grace of spiritual master. Yesterday we were reading this poem by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he said, I'm chanting, my mind is going here, my mind is going there, and I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And he describes, I think about the universe, I think about the past, I think about the present. He goes through all this, and in the end says, are you praying to Krishna to help you to chant properly? That's the point. You have to ask for that. You know, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, Haridas Thakur, he said, no one in this world is chanting without distraction. Therefore, we have to pray for the mercy of Krishna to allow us to do such victories only possible by the mercy of the Supreme Being. You see, that's the point. And the Vandanam, although Vandanam is one of our qualities described in our Shastras by Srila Rupa Goswami, is one of the major things that's often forgotten, that we have to pray, please Krishna, I have one desire. What is that desire? He said, I want to become a pure devotee. How do I do that, Krishna? How do I become a pure devotee? That's a good prayer. It's the best prayer. How can I become a pure devotee? That's a real issue of life. And Krishna, he bangs us so many times on the head till we finally get that. We finally wake up from our slumber. It's on the lap of Maya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premananda, Hari Bol.
His Grace Prithu Prabhu ki. So tomorrow, Prabhuji will be going to Shri Radha Kunji Bihari Mandir, Camp Temple, for the morning Bhagavatam class. And then after that, starting from Friday, so we have Srila Prabhupada Katha, Srila Prabhupada in Germany, Srila Prabhupada in France, Srila Prabhupada in Sweden, Srila Prabhupada in one more place, this Amsterdam. So I said one day a little short, but still we'll try to have Katha with the pictures, because we have very rare pictures. So that will be from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. We'll also be doing online broadcast of that. We'll have it here in the temple hall.
Just to tell you one little thing. One time a devotee was telling Srila Prabhupada, sometimes I'm thinking, and Prabhupada said, don't do that. You understood? In the back, one devotee said, but Srila Prabhupada, sometimes I'm thinking, and Prabhupada said, don't do that.
So we'll have Srila Prabhupada Katha for 4 days. Very special fortune, because it's the 125th anniversary of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada's appearance. And we have very great fortune to have Prabhuji here, because now there are very few disciples of Srila Prabhupada still on the planet, and Prabhuji had a lot of interaction with Srila Prabhupada. He served Srila Prabhupada's mission for the last more than 50 years, 5 decades. So we'll hear some thrilling pastime to how Prabhupada book entered Germany, the Iron Curtain. These are something which will make our hair stand on end. So please be there. Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, all 4 days, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Place we have for all inmates in Temple Hall, and everything will be broadcasted on Zoom and YouTube. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta ki jai.
Shiva Om Nitya